what the purpose of this lecture is really. Why do we bring this such a great woman from America to UK, to Brixton, to talk about some, people call it some dodgy or something that people don't want to deal with, stuff like that. So there's always a reason that we bring here. So Natal, I'm from Natal. Most of the teams are from Natal, as well as the cooperative teams of the world. Natal is a health shop. How many of you know Natal? Yeah, I know some of you, most of you. So Natal is a health store. Actually, it's focusing the overall wellness of humanity itself. So, and we specialize in health and spiritual products, as well as seminars and lectures. So our store is not only a shop, but it's also a lifelong education institution in which we organize events, we do workshops, we do consultations, we educate people the nature of reality. And this process, every year we invite different lecturers and scholars to come that we feel we value, that we feel they have done their research thoroughly so that they can stand and speak on information that's supposed to allow us to grow, to become better, to also for us to be able to make the right choice in our life. So the idea is that how can we make the right choices? And sometimes we need knowledge to do that. If you don't have no knowledge, if you don't know from right to wrong, you cannot be able to make choices. Sometimes we learn by making mistakes, that's a good thing. But when that repeats itself, you see, then that's another thing. So the idea is also bringing these scholars to come. How can you elevate yourself? How can you grow in mind, body, and soul? That's the idea. And we have 3 lectures that's going to take different lectures that's going to take place throughout the coming days. So today we have this lecture on resurrection, near-death experience I've never seen before. Tomorrow we will have a workshop in Natal shop. Then you have to book that in today. So we'll have a workshop based on Dr. P.M.H. Atwater book called Manual for Developing Humans. And she wrote that book when she was in a specific spiritual state of frequency, and she was instructed to write that book. That's supposed to help a person, any person, to be able to use this manual to make you better. To make it better for yourself as well as humanity. I'm sure Dr. P.M.H. will add more to it than I say here. So that's what will happen tomorrow from 4:30 to 7 o'clock. 4:30 at Brixton store. Usually we have our meditation classes, but tomorrow we will have Dr. P.M.H. will speak. I will hold a workshop tomorrow from 4:30 to 7 o'clock, up to 7 o'clock. And on the week after, Wednesday, from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock, we have a question-answer class, also to intermingle with the P.M.H. Atwater and ask questions that you might want to know of the nature of reality when it comes also to spirituality. She's a well-known researcher. So she's not only dealing with near-death experience, but also other type of knowledge that complement, to become better. So we should be ontologists. Do you know what the word ontologist means? The word ontologist translates as the study of a being and the hierarchies of where we are, who we are, and what we are by natural nature. I mean, in a short term, that's what ontologist, the study of your being. So the type of knowledge and stuff that she's bringing is to study who and what you are, so that fear no longer permeates in your mind and your heart. So that's the key. Knowledge eradicates fear. Sometimes we're afraid of something. We say, I can't do it at this workplace. Say, I can't do this. I never done this before. And then you are the best at it all of a sudden within 2 months. So when you're exposed to something challenging, it's good sometimes. And then your divine, your higher attribute can come forth when you're challenged. So it's good to challenge yourself. So knowledge is the key to us to elevate, to grow in mind, body, and soul. So I want to introduce Dr. P.M.H. Atwater. She's author of more than 15 books. You find some of the books there, including Dying to Know You, Future Memory, Beyond Indigo Children, We Live Forever. And there's another book called I Died 3 Times in 1977. That's her story. It's called The Complete Story. She has been researching a near-death phenomena since 1978. Yeah, some of you wasn't born then, right? A lot of you wasn't born then, right? She was doing a research before he was born. That tells you a lot. And is considered a world authority on a subject. She's a workshop leader. at the major spiritual holistic gathering and has addressed audiences at the international associations for leadership studies, as well as United Nations and in numerous countries. You know, she traveled different places to do lectures with thousands of people in front. So her books also have been translated over 12 languages. She's appeared on Larry King's live shows, Regis and Kathy Lee, and Geraldo show as well. So there's more to it than that. If you do research on it, this is nothing. You need about 5 pages of this to talk about who she is and what she did for humanity and contribution of that. So we love people that are doing something, they reflect. You know, we love people when they teach something and they're reflecting in what they do and how they are in their lives. So knowledge is not just to have it in our head, but what? It's also to apply it in our life. Otherwise, knowledge has no value if you don't apply it in your life. Does it make sense? So the key is that, okay, how can we take this knowledge and how can I apply it? Some people, when they meditate, they get scared because something happened. How many of you get scared when you meditate? Raise your hand. No? Okay, that's a good thing. But most of the time I've seen people, they get scared because they start experiencing something, they cannot define what they experience. You see? And they get scared, like, let me stop doing this because something happened now. So knowledge is the key to free ourselves. Knowledge is the key, and also to apply that. You see? So with this and said, I want to wait 5 more minutes. Do you have a question what I just made a statement for? Do you have any question regarding the workshop that we're going to be doing in the coming days? No? Okay. Okay. So with this, I want to invite Dr. P.M.H. Atwater to come to the front, please. Give everybody an applause to Dr. P.M.H. Atwater. So welcome. I want to give the stage to you so that you can start the lecture. I think we can wait another 15 minutes, but until then you can.
Really? Well,
it's up
why
to
don't
you.
we just start now?
That's fine.
Not quite as tall as you, That's right. Hello there. My name is P.M.H. Atwater. Yes, just initials. No, they don't stand for anything. So I'm just P.M.H. And that's fun to be. Welcome. I'd like you to know just a little bit more about me before we get into the subject at hand. If you know anything at all about America, I come from the state of Idaho. That's the Northwest. From the southern part of Idaho, which is mostly deserts and canyons and volcanic cones. So I come from deserts, canyons, and volcanoes, which means I erupt. Had 5 fathers and 2 mothers, so I have an interesting childhood. Wound up being raised by Norwegians. Can you imagine Norwegians in southern Idaho? That's a story unto itself. I married, had 3 children, and then things happened, as they often do. And one of the things that happened to me was I had a nervous breakdown. Probably because there was never a speck of dirt in my house. The outside yards were perfect. I always baked my own bread, raised and canned my own food. I was very independent. Never spent over $15 a month for groceries for a family of 5 because I made it all myself. And then the doctors called it a mild nervous breakdown. And after that, I discovered things like Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet, and psychic things, and all kinds of strange esoteric things. And all of a sudden, bingo, that meant something to me. And I started reading and studying, and over time I became a professional past life regressionist. Did a lot of that. I taught psychism, I taught all kinds of things. And then I started testing, and I started experimenting. And I was experimenting with all kinds of different subjects, with all kinds of people, always involving people. It's not enough that I could do something. I wanted to see what you could do. And that again and again and again, with thousands of people. Easily, over 3,000 people. Easily. All ages. We're experimenting with biorhythms and hypnosis and what you can do with your hands and your energy, past life regressions. I mean, you name it, we were doing it all. And then maybe some of you who have done some spiritual reading are familiar with the various types of traditions. You know about this phrase, and that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. You kind of familiar with that in your readings? When the student is ready, the teacher will come. I'd had many teachers, and I was ready for another one. You know, I was really ready. Oh, I got death instead. I was expecting a human being. That's not what I got. I was raped, became pregnant, all kinds of problems with the pregnancy and the miscarriage, and died 3 times in 3 months. Twice in January of 1977 and once in March. Later that fall, I had 3 major relapses, one of which was total adrenal failure. So 1977 wasn't exactly my year. It seems like everything broke down. In my own particular near-death experiences, what was true for me was that I was comfortable anywhere and in any kind of environment, on any level. I was completely comfortable. I was also completely comfortable not having an ego. Didn't need that. I didn't need an I am. I didn't need who I was. I didn't need male or female. Didn't need any of that. Other than that, everything that occurred was beyond my capability of understanding. Incredible things occurred that I'd never heard of, had no background for, and could not handle. So among the things that I dealt with was being introduced to new worlds and new ways of living at the same time that my body was not functioning. I could not walk, hardly at all, dragging my right leg. I couldn't understand things on the earth plane anymore. I didn't know who my children were. What's a child? What's a mother? I didn't understand pots and pans. I didn't understand I didn't understand food. Why do we eat? What's food for? Just to give you an example of how confusing it was for me, I would take a can of food off the cupboard, and I would open up the can, and I would lift up a saucepan. I would empty the can into the saucepan, put the can down, turn the stove on, put the saucepan on the burner. When it was the right temperature, turn the stove off, pick up the saucepan, or the pan, get a plate, empty it in the plate, put the pan down, and then I would look at the food on the plate. And I would think to myself, what's that for? I had no idea why I was doing what I was doing for what purpose. I had the habit. I didn't lose habits. I lost meaning. So mine was the struggle to get back meaning. What is it to wear a body? What is it to be a female or a male? What is it to work? What is money for? So I was constantly re-identifying everything. Pots and pans, dishes, soap, sheets, children, mothers. What is all this stuff for? I even went as far as to send off to all the major makers of pots and pans. I got their manufacturing specs and their metallurgical reports. Then I took that, went to a lab in Boise, Idaho, where I was living at the time, and had it tested. And only then would I use that particular pan. Threw out all the rest. I threw out all my copper. I threw out everything with a copper bottom out the door. So, it was just an immense time of re-identifying everything. What works, what doesn't, why, and how. In 1978 then began my new life. I've been told in my third near-death experience by what I call the voice like none other. I couldn't call it an angel. Couldn't call it anybody I knew. It just didn't even seem like fitting to call it God. It was just so big. It was a voice bigger than the cosmos. And I call it the voice like none other. My sense was it was from God, but it was so big. And that voice said, and I quote, "Test revelation. You are here to do the research. One book for each death." I was not told what was to be in book one. I don't even know the name of it. I'm not sure what book one was. Might have been Coming Back to Life. It's still available on the internet through Amazon.com. The second book was Future Memory. If you ever have a chance, get a hold of Future Memory. It's a labyrinth, by the way. It's not a book. Don't read it like you read a book. You skip read on a book. When you open up the book, you're opening up the mouth of the labyrinth. Stay on the path. It'll go all kinds of directions. Stay on the path until you're through with the book. It's not a book, it's a labyrinth. It was designed that way by the voice like none other to enable your brain, your mind, your consciousness to rise to the next highest level possible for you. The book is literally a psychotronic device. It is a brain changer. The third book was a manual for developing humans. Fortunately, we have no copies left. It's out of print. It's being reprinted right now. I consider that the most important book I've ever written. A manual for developing humans. We'll be talking about that a lot tomorrow and doing some of the exercises that are in the book. You're going to love them. They're simple and easy, and believe me, you're going to love them. You'll probably laugh a lot. It's how to be a human being. It's how to be you. It's how to be the greatness that you are in simple, easy steps. The book, A Manual for Developing Human, has a 5th dimensional format. It's the only book I've written like that. Again, following the directions of the voice like none other. There's 6 sections. Each section has the conscious, superconscious, the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious all at once. You get it all at once. Remember, the 5th dimension, all is revealed. Intention rules. So that's the way the book is written. All is revealed. Intention rules. It's who you really are. Let me give you a little hint of who you really are. Thousands of years ago, the sound of God was Hugh. Hugh. Hugh man was God man. Hugh woman was God woman. They knew then that we are gods in the making. Says so in the Bible, says so in all your great spiritual texts. Well, if that's who we are, don't you think it's about time we started living it? You bet. So we'll get a little taste of that tomorrow. Today we're talking about near-death experiences. How many here have had a near-death experience? Raise your hand if you have. We've got a few. A few. Do you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a near-death experience? Are you maybe a little puzzled? A near-death experience is an otherworldly event, whether pleasant or unpleasant, that happens to people at the edge of death. Either you are without vital signs or close to it. That makes a significant difference in your life. It could have many different parts to it, or it can just be a single thing. Let me talk about that. What I found was 4 major types of near-death experiences. The first one I call the initial experience. Usually it's just one thing, maybe 2 or 3. Children have a lot of these, but so can adults. Maybe it's something like an out-of-body experience. Suddenly you find yourself floating around the ceiling, maybe you left the room, maybe you're somewhere else. Or maybe you're just at the ceiling looking down and realizing, oh my goodness, who's that down there? Oh, it's me. You're out of your body. Or maybe it's just a friendly voice or a loving nothingness. It's very simple. The next one is the hellish or unpleasant experience. Yes, people have very unpleasant, hellish experiences too. You bet they do. Some of it is something like a black void, or twisting winds, loud sounds, maybe some kind of hellish environment. In my research base, 1 out of 7 had that. By the way, my research base is nearly 5,000 people, adults and children. 1 out of 7. You're probably the more familiar with the more pleasant or heavenly experience. Not even 50% have that. Maybe 45 to 48% have that. But that's the one you're the most familiar with. That's what's on TV, that's what the movies are about. Most of the people that write books write about the heavenly or very pleasant experience. So I don't need to tell you about that one. Excuse me. And then there's the transcendent experience. Usually the transcendent experience is long and complex. Very seldom do you have anything like a past life review. Very seldom does it have anything to do with you. Rather, it has to do with the human condition. or history, or what you can do to make a difference in the world. That gives you an idea of the different types of experiences that can occur. But let me just sort of back up here a little bit and define a little bit more about near-death experience, in that most of them happen when the individual, the brain is not working, there's no air, and the heart is not working. So nothing, no vital signs. No brain, no lungs, no heart. Some people are out in that capacity, maybe for overnight, another day. George Rodenaya, if you know anything about his case, he was without vital signs for 3 days and came back on the autopsy table while they were splitting up his chest. That's the case of George Rodenaya. But, you know, we don't have very many like that. Usually, average is from 5 to 20 minutes. Offline, that is to say no vital signs, from 5 to 20 minutes. Now we know, you know, without air, 3 to 4 minutes, there's brain damage, right? With a near-death experience, 5 to 20 minutes with no vital signs is normal. So we know something special or something different is happening here. So there's been a lot of scientists, a lot of doctors looking into the near-death experience because of this. And what they've been able to find scientifically is without vital signs, you can still have clear, enhanced consciousness. You can still have full memory and a full sense of self-identity. You can still think, you can still move around. You can still figure things out. And no vital signs at all. So this invites us to look at ourselves, the bodies that we're wearing, and realize there's more to us than what you see or what you feel or what you touch. Obviously there's more to you. We've got millions and millions of people worldwide who've had a near-death experience. In the book that's coming out in September this year called The Forever Angels, I've done my first concentrated study of the little bitty ones. I've done children before, but these are the little ones. When you had a near-death experience before you're born, during birth, after birth, as a babe, toddler, or very young child. Yes, little ones can have near-death experiences. Indeed they do. And the surprise about what those experiences are and how they change the people. Think for a minute. During that time, there is so much happening to the flooring in the brain. And they're suddenly struck by the power of a near-death experience. And what I'm finding is that invariably, most of these kids come back smarter than the average child. Many of them come back geniuses. It's doing something to the nervous system and the flooring of the brain. And I get into that as much as I can, especially in the one that's coming, The Forever Angels. But it often changes adults too. We come back many times knowing more than we did before, feeling different. Some people feel like they had a mental breakdown instead of a spiritual uplift, because suddenly you're just so different. It's like you love everybody. You know? Every woman is your mother, your sister, your aunt, your daughter. Every man you see is your brother, your husband, your father, and your son. It's not that you can't tell differences. It's just that you tend to love them all at the same time. And that gets a little sticky because maybe your mate doesn't understand that and accuses you of flirting. You can run into all kinds of problems with what is called unconditional love. You hear that a lot, don't you, in the spiritual groups and different types of churches, unconditional love. Well, guess what? We have a little problem with that phrase called unconditional love. And here's what the problem is. Unconditional love is God's love. It's agape. That love for everybody. It's not husband-wife love. It's not mother-daughter love or mother-son love. It's love for everybody. And that kind of love can be really misunderstood. It really behooves an experiencer to spend some time with your mate or your friends or your family and share your experience. Let them get a little taste of what you went through or what you're seeing or what you're feeling so that they don't feel put off or they don't feel insulted or they don't think you're some kind of, having a breakdown of some kind. This is normal. It's normal to be psychic afterward. It's normal to see other energies afterward, maybe other beings in the energies. It's perfectly normal to suddenly be very creative and innovative. It's perfectly normal to have someone manifest next to you. You can call it a ghost if you want. Maybe not. Maybe it's someone from some other plane. I've often threatened in our home to have a sign made that would be over the front door to our house. And it would say, "Welcome," whether you're wearing a body or not. Doesn't matter. Or maybe you're just mixed up and you're hearing things and seeing things you never saw before. And what I tell people is please get on my website. My website is www.pmhatwater.com, all lowercase, one word, pmhatwater.com. There on the home page is a special section called NDE After Effects. Please get in there. I call that first aid for experiencers. And that helps you then to deal with maybe food is different for you now. Maybe the way you handle your energy is different for you now. After my experiences, I could no longer handle sugar. So maybe there are very substantial changes of some kind or another. I'd like to talk about the major elements that are usually found in near-death experiences. Most people have an out-of-body experience, adults and children. That is to say, they leave their body and look down. Maybe sometimes they leave the premises. This one person I spoke with, he was suddenly on top of the emergency vehicle that was taking him to the hospital. And he said, I really enjoyed the ride. I got so much out of just watching all the buildings and all the people as they took him to the hospital. But he was on top of the vehicle the whole time. It's not at all different or unusual to have the person be several blocks away. Maybe they'll go home. I've had a number of people that went home and were there when the call came through from the hospital that they had died. So they knew who picked up the phone and everything that was said. Then went back to their body, revived, and then they could tell the individuals, the nurses and the doctors, who was there and what they said. And that can sometimes be rather embarrassing. It can sometimes be kind of difficult. So the out-of-body experience is very popular. I'd say easily 60 to 70 people have an out-of-body experience. The second most frequent thing that happens is the light. I think you've all heard about the light that people experience on the other side of death. Adults usually say, that light is so bright, so big, so bright, that it's brighter than 10,000 suns. Instantly you're fried, but there's no pain. So there's just something incredible about that light. And that light knows your name, knows all about you, and you can converse with that light. That light knows all about you. You can call that light God. You can call that light an emissary. Don't care what you call it. That light is so incredibly special. Then the third element that happens to a lot of people is a past life review. Maybe you've heard about past life review. You die and your life flashes before your eyes. Well, it doesn't always flash. Sometimes you relive it. Sometimes you go back to the beginning as a baby and relive your life up until the time you died. Some people, it's in reverse. Or they're living parts of the life again. Or they're seeing their life shown to them as if in a movie theater and you're seeing it. Some people talk about going to a hall of records, a great hall, and they're seeing the book of life, their life, and they can page through it. Some people say, well, they're going to that same hall, but it's not a book. It's television sets. All over the walls, television sets. And you pick whatever one and you want to go into and see that section of your life. And, people are very creative, TV sets. I thought that was interesting myself. But that past life review, children have them too. You say, well, a kid hasn't had much of a past life. But very often it will focus on the family unit and how people are getting along. This one little 4-year-old, she drowned in a river. She had a past life review. And in hers, she saw this huge stage. She had a bunch of sisters. And all the sisters were going by on that stage. And she was pestering all of them. And picking fights with all of her sisters. And she was the bane of the family's existence. She was always picking fights. And And in her experience, she had angels to the left, angels to the right. They never said anything. They just pointed to what was going on the screen. And she learned from that she shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff so much. That this was a problem. So when I was working with her, she said, today I think with my heart. So she runs everything through her heart first before she takes the action. She just doesn't come from the mind and jump with her first impulse. No, she runs it through her heart first before she responds. So she learned from that and doing that in her experience. Some of these past life reviews can be heavy. Most people say, well, you see your life, but the pain isn't there. You're learning. It's for instruction. But other people say, well, it hurts like hell. Some of them have really rough experiences. Let me give you a case in point. This is a guy in the Chicago, Illinois area. I'd say he was probably in his late 40s, early 50s. He was more of a criminal type, sort of like with the mafia, if you know what that means. He'd kill people, he'd hurt people. He had a near-death experience, and it focused very heavily on the past life review. And during that review, he not only experienced the pain he caused other people, but he also experienced the pain the families of these people went through. The people who knew these individuals, he got their pain too. So he got double duty. The individual plus everybody who knew that individual, he got their pain too. He was so traumatized by his past life review that he was very mild and meek. He was serving soup to street people, working with churches. And he said, I can't be like that anymore. I have to somehow make a difference in the world now. I want to be kind to people. So I can change like that. In my own case, I got one of those heavy duties. My own past life review, I experienced everything people thought or felt about me, whether I knew them or not, just walking down the street, just being out in the world. Anybody that ever came close to me, I got their energy. To me, if there's anything like hell, that was hell. I was raised knowing that what we do might be helpful or not helpful. You know, be careful what you do in life. I wasn't raised to know that everything we think and everything we feel has an effect on everyone who comes within our environment, whether we meet them or not. It has the effect on the air and the weather. It has an effect on the soil and the bushes and the trees and the animals. That you, every one of you, is precious. And that you feed this dimension we call the earth plane. You feed it in a sense of your energy and what you bring to the plate. I didn't know that. It was a total gestalt of my ever having existed in the earth plane. And that was heavy for me. And then a lot of people are met by a greeter of some kind. Maybe it's a grandmother or a grandfather. Maybe it's a child that you've lost. Maybe it's an aunt, an uncle, a husband, a mother, a friend. Maybe it's an angel, maybe it's a spirit being. And maybe it's the child you aborted 4 years ago. Aborted babies come out often in past life reviews or in near-death experiences. Let me give you a case. They don't always do that, but many times do that. Let me give you a case in point. This is around Salt Lake City, Utah. So it's northern Utah. There's a mom and dad. Mom is in her late 20s. Dad is in his early 30s. They had one child, a boy. The boy was about 4. The boy drowned in the parents' backyard swimming pool. So they pull in the EMT crews, and lots of people came, neighbors came to the aid, they were praying, they were helping, they were doing everything they could to save this baby, this boy. And after about maybe 10, 15 minutes, there's a long time, but remember that's kind of normal with near-death experiences. The child is able to, coughing up water, able to breathe again, and the mom is so relieved. And she's leaning over her child. I call him Jimmy John. She's leaning over Jimmy John, and she's white-faced and so grateful he's back. And the boy became very excited. He said, Mommy, I met my brother. And he told me all about the time you had him pulled from your tummy when you were 13. Shock, big time. Mom, she was not mourning at all. She was sorry at all about the abortion. She didn't even think about it. Never told her husband. Her husband was shocked. This caused real problems between husband and wife, and they got a divorce. Little Jimmy John was having a ball because from then on he had a playmate. But notice, to Jimmy John, that brother appeared as a little brother, when actually he should have been a big brother. You get accommodations a lot in these experiences on the other side. Jimmy John would probably have been frightened by a big brother, but he wasn't frightened about a little brother. So the older brother came back as a younger brother so that they could have a fun and pleasant experience. I don't know what finally happened to that family. But we can have all kinds of interesting things that happen with these near-death experiences. you'll notice that I didn't say anything at all about tunnels. Did you notice that? Didn't mention tunnels. Few people experience a tunnel in their near-death experience. This business about the light at the end of the tunnel, and you go through the tunnel after death, about a fourth of the people who have a near-death experience today experience a tunnel. Back in 1982, when Gallup Poll did their first major study, scientific study of near-death experiences, only 9% of the people experienced a tunnel. Now it's maybe 25%. The reason we have so many people talking about tunnels is because of the media. You can trace it back. You can trace it back to when the media started sensationalizing Raymond Moody's first book, Life After Life. After several years of the media sensationalizing that aspect of the near-death experience, it suddenly became very popular, and everybody thought, did everyone who has a near-death experience has a tunnel? No. Also, the aspect that most of these cases happen in a hospital. No, they don't. Maybe 12 to 27% happen in a hospital. Again, the media. Because it's cheaper and easier to do a documentary about a person in a hospital bed. With the cameras, the action, the story form. It's a lot easier to do if it's in a hospital environment. Most of these cases happen outside or in life. Maybe a drowning, maybe a high fever, maybe a beating, but not necessarily in a hospital. So there's really no storyline with near-death experiences. They vary. They vary very much. Let me give you some examples here. This is late October. It's just outside Portland, Oregon, which is the far west coast of the United States. It was the guy was driving outside of Portland on hairpin curves, way outside of Portland, Oregon. It was around midnight. Suddenly, there's a temperature inversion. Been drizzling a little bit, but there's this temperature inversion. That is to say, suddenly the temperature dropped. And we had a condition that we call black ice. Do you know what black ice is? Ice on the road that you can't see at all, doesn't shine at all. That's called black ice. So he's still traveling along these switchback curves, and there's this sudden black ice. He did not know it. And he crashes into a great big tree. Lost control of his car, crashes into a big tree. I mean, really smashes up the car. Bad. His words, he floated up to the top of the tree and looked down. He saw that his right arm was no longer attached to his body and that he was bleeding profusely. His desire was to save his body. So he looked around to see anybody in the area, anybody living in the area, any houses. And there was only one. It was on a ridge a little bit over here. So his words again, he flew over there. Now, I don't know how he flew over there. He just said he flew over there. And there was a light in the upstairs, corner upstairs. So he went to the window with the light. So he said, I just started yelling at him. Yelling. There's been an accident, call the police. There's been an accident, call the police. And the guy inside told the police officers later, he said, there was this fog outside of my window and it was jumping up and down. He said, fog doesn't jump up and down. And he heard this voice in his ears that said, very strong man's voice saying, call the police, there's been an accident. Well, he right away went to the telephone and called the police and reported the accident. Of course, he had to find it. So he grabbed a flashlight, went downstairs, outside, and was looking around and finally found it. And he was just there to flash down the police and the ambulance when they came, rushed the guy to the hospital. He died on the operating table. No, they could not reattach the right arm. This man was a right-handed artist. Lost the right arm. He was blind. Couldn't bring back his sight. He was badly hurt. He was in the hospital for a number of months. But his sight came back. His sight came back. And the first thing he asked of the nurses was, bring me paper and a pen. So they brought him paper and a pen. And with his left hand, he drew a picture of the accident scene. So they called in the ambulance crew. They called in the police officers. They called in the man in the house. Look at this. And it was exactly the accident scene, as if it were a photograph. How could he have done that? That's how clear the sight is. How clear you are without a body. Incredible. I'm going to give you another case. This is a Margaret Fields Keene. That's her name. This is in North Carolina. This is on the eastern coast of the United States. She was no longer married, divorced, raising her daughter herself. She was a school teacher. She taught, she also taught Sunday school. She was a gardener, prided herself on her gardens, what she could raise in her gardens. And she was a horsewoman. That is to say, she had horses, corral, lots of horses. She had very, very severe phlebitis of both legs. Rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. They did this surgery, and she's now in the recovery room after surgery. Are you all with me? She's in the recovery room after surgery. During the time she was dead, she was in a very beautiful green wonderful landscape. Grass, bushes, trees, and there was this great river in front of her. And she could not cross the river. She sensed that she couldn't cross it. It's a beautiful place. And a voice from the other side of the river told her it wasn't her time, she had to go back, but she had to become a healer, even in darkest Africa. So she revived on the table in this recovery room, and there was a young man in there on a table, and he was screaming and crying and had so much pain, and her words, she just went over to him, passed her hands over him. He quit screaming and crying and went to sleep. And she had a feeling that she had to enter the room at the end of the hall. The windows were all blackened. You couldn't see who was in there. She had no knowledge at all of anybody being in the room. Nobody was talking about that. She just knew she had to go there. So again, her words, she went through the wall into the other side. Now, I don't know how she went through the wall. She just did. And on the other side was a bed, a little boy, maybe 6 or 7. And her words, he was a white boy burned black. So we're talking major burn victim here. So she sat down on the edge of the bed and she started talking to him. She talked about death and what it was like. She talked about pain and all this kind of what life is for. And that there's no pain in dying. And that it's going to be okay with mom and dad. Yeah, it's going to hurt. But, it's all right that you go. It's all right with them that you go. And she really taught him how to die. And then left. Now we're talking now 2 months later. So 2 months later, she's out of the hospital. She's now in a wheelchair. She's attending a major horse meet, that is to say the races and all kinds of showings that they do with horses at horse meets. And her daughter was showing, and her daughter won. So on the loudspeaker, they give her name and that she's the daughter of, and they give Margaret's name. And there's this rush and rumble in the audience. And a couple emerged and they headed right for Margaret. Oh, we finally found you. We've been looking for you all over. They were the parents of the little boy. He told them her name. And they've been looking for her all over. And they said, oh, it's so important to us that we found you and to thank you for everything you told him. That it enabled him to die easily and without effort. And it enabled us to handle his death without pain and guilt. We are so grateful you were there to talk to our son. How do you explain that? Let me give you another little quickie here. This is a woman, I'm going to say maybe in her early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. And she's driving out in the countryside where there are a lot of fields, that is to say, farm fields. And she's driving right along, and a truck is coming. She's going one way, the truck is headed for her, and the truck hits her. It's the driver's side, and instantly she's killed. The paramedics are called, the ambulance is called, they rush her to the hospital, and they are able to save her. Right away, she says to the doctors in the operating room, my father, I saw my father, I saw my dad. And he told me he was dead. And he told me all about how he was killed. And he said not to worry about it because it was his time, and he knew it was his time, and it was okay. But he says, you have to go back because it's not your time, and it's not okay. And she was so animated. And the doctors just really couldn't control her. And it's starting to cause a problem, in the operating room, it's starting a little problem. So one of the doctors went out and they went to one of the waiting rooms where the family was gathered. And they said to the family, what's this about the father? Where's her father? And the doctor told the family, what she had said. And the family said, oh, poo-poo, the father is in excellent health. One of them had spoken to him that morning on the telephone. There was nothing wrong with the father. So the doctor went back and told the woman on the operating table. And instead of calming her down, she became even more excited. And she said, I saw my dad. And this is what he said to me. And this was causing such a big problem. So the doctor, kind of angry, went back to the family and said, get that man on the telephone. Get that man on the telephone right now. I want to take that telephone into the operating room so the dad can talk to his daughter. They tried and tried and tried and tried to get the hold of the dad. And what they found is that the father had died 5 minutes before the daughter did, in exactly the way she told them. Think about that.